In this video, I'll be showing you what I consider to be the best strategy for duels. This isn't the best way to speedrun wins in duels, but if that's what you are looking for in this video, then click the link in the description instead because I have made a video on the fastest way to speedrun. Duels, I mean. Now let's begin. Both players need to equip the Zephyr kit. Zephyr is a very powerful kit in duels because players love rushing, be it rushing to mid or rushing your bed right away. The rushers are gonna feed you kills which will give you win stacks as Zephyr. Even if they break your bed, chances are they're gonna die after that, which is gonna feed you win stacks, which are very OP. If you know how to keep the win stack going and not lose your momentum, you can pretty much dominate the game already. And you get win stacks not just for kills, but also assists, meaning even if your teammate gets the kill, you'll still get win stacks. Now, the idea behind having two Zephyrs is that both players on the team will get a win stack per kill if you stick together. As a general guide to teamfights in BedWars, all players in the team should target one enemy first before moving on to the next until all of them are dead. Please note that no strategy in BedWars is ever set in stone. You'll have to adapt according to how the game goes. That being said, strategies can still provide a guideline on what to do until there is a need to improvise. Now here's the strategy. For most maps, both players save up to 8 iron to buy 16 wool each. One player covers the bed while the other player starts bridging to mid. If you get the Ruins or Mystic map, however, do this instead. One player feeds 4 iron to the other player, then saves up to 8 iron to buy 16 wool, then covers the bed. The other player takes the 4 iron given to him and saves up to 16 iron instead, to buy 32 wool, then bridges to mid. This is because on the Ruins and Mystic map, there is a greater distance between mid and your base, so it takes more wool to bridge there. After that though, the strategy is the same for all maps. Both players stick together and camp mid until the more skilled players, quote unquote, has 4 emeralds. Be sure to kill anyone who comes to mid for the free win stacks and also to defend your emeralds. Then get at least 4 diamonds to unlock the armory. Both players then return to base and gen split for iron, then both of them buy leather armor and wood. The quote-unquote more skilled player buys a diamond sword as well. Then both players return to mid to gather even more Ms for the other player to buy a diamond sword, so that both players can have a diamond sword. Then return to base and gen split. Then the less skilled player will give the iron to the more skilled player, so that the more skilled player can buy iron armor. The less skilled player buys a diamond sword. So at this point, the less skilled player should have leather armor and a diamond sword, and the more skilled player should have iron armor and a diamond sword. And from here on, just keep farming resources and bullying the enemies until you win. When I refer to players as less skilled or more skilled, I'm not trying to say that some are noobs and some are pros. It's just that most of the time when playing with a team, you'll notice that there is one person who is just better than the rest. The same goes for duels. It's almost guaranteed that one player will be better than the other in any duel. I use knowledge of players' skill level in my strategy so that more resources are invested into players who can make better use of them. If you're playing the role of the quote-unquote less skilled player, this does not make you a noob. It's just that your teammate is just better. Both players should generally stay together throughout the match. By staying together, I mean no further than 8 blocks away from each other. But if the situation calls for a temporary separation, then you can separate, but just try to stay together as much as possible. Neither player should try to go for the enemy's bed unless you have a significant advantage over them. More often than not, you'll just lose your win stacks, feed the enemy, and fail to break their bed. It's just not worth the risk, and even if you do succeed, dying makes you lose momentum in the game. As Zephyr, you have to maintain the momentum to keep those win stacks high and be OP. But this does not mean you have to wait until all beds break to win the game. If you have been farming and keeping the pressure on your enemies consistently like you're supposed to be in this strategy, you'll eventually reach a point where your team has a significant advantage over your enemies. This is when your team breaks the enemy's bed and kills them, winning the game. Do not get complacent. This means logically assess the situation and refrain from doing things out of your own ego, which me personally, I do that quite often. Specific examples include but are not limited to attacking when you're low, taking on a 1v2 without having way better gear than your enemies, and expecting to kill someone with better gear just by pulling off a combo, which is possible but rare. There are times when it's good to take risks, sure, but in those situations that I just mentioned, it's just better to play it safe. If you find that this strategy makes the early game too hard, there are alternative ways to make it easier for you. One player can use Hannah or Evelyn instead so that you have an early game advantage. Because Zephyr requires you to get skill in order to be OP, which is not something that you start off with in the game. So some of you might have an easier time if one player uses Zephyr and the other uses Hannah or Evelyn, instead of using a double Zephyr strategy, which is better for domination in the mid-game if things go well in the early game. And that's all for the video. Like this video if you enjoyed it or found it helpful, and subscribe too if you want to. Goodbye.